Brockton residents, this is Mayor Robert Sullivan, and it's Thursday, May 21st. And this is, I think, the 5th or 6th week on Thursday where Brockton Community Access has allowed me to come and have some invited guests to talk about what the city is doing with COVID-19. We concluded our city councilors last week with Councilor Yaneri and Councilor Nicastro, and I thought it would be more than appropriate to have our great superintendent of schools, Mike Thomas, to join us, and the vice chairman and Ward 3 school committee member, Mark D'Agostino. Mark and Mike, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for having
Happy
us.
to be here.
Really appreciate it. What I wanted to do, first of all, is share with Brockton residents where we are right now with COVID based upon numbers. Unfortunately, we are at 227 deaths, and that's gone up too since yesterday, which is just tragic. And our thoughts and prayers go to the departed and, of course, the surviving loved ones. 1,869 folks are currently dealing with positive cases as COVID. 1,869. The good news is last week we were up to about 2,800, 2,900. So people are recovering. I'm on 3 calls a week with all the medical facilities in Brockton, from Brockton Neighborhood Health Center to Good Samaritan Medical Center to Signature Brockton Hospital. And you know what we're seeing is the census, meaning people coming to the hospital, are less and less with COVID symptoms. So that's great. And 3,806 is the total number. And I do want to thank Linda Cahill. She's the interim health officer for Brockton Board of Health. And I want to thank the superintendent and Kim Gibson, the president of the BEA, because as I've said before, Linda is director of school nursing for 8 years. For the last 18, she's been working for Brockton Public Schools. And when Mr. John McGarry stepped aside after his great efforts, I went to the superintendent and Mike said, what can I do to help you? And Linda is on loan, I guess you could say, until school starts again. But really the gist of this, superintendent and vice chairman, is I meet every week with elected officials and civic activists. We just had a wonderful school committee meeting just the other night. And so with that being said, this would just give us a forum, an update on what's going on, the planning for the graduation, and in terms of what we might forecast in the fall when school hopefully reopens. So I'm going to open it up to Superintendent Thomas. Mike, thanks for joining tonight.
Thank you, Mayor, for having us tonight. We appreciate it. Again, our hearts and thoughts and prayers go out to the community that suffered such a great loss. So we continue to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. So, and I want to thank you, school committee, city council, and the community of Brockton for their support of the Brockton Public Schools. It's been hard on all of us. A district that, as you know, has cut so many things over the last several years. And then to quickly have to switch over to remote learning, something that we were not set up for due to those budget cuts over the years. But we've mobilized pretty quickly. And we're able to loan out 6,500 laptops to families that needed them. We're in the process of helping families now get internet access through our Title I funds. And principals are reaching out to families, finding out who needs that internet access. Early on, with the support of the school committee, we were able to arrange every principal to get a cell phone that connects directly to their main office phone line. So principals had parents had a direct access to the principal, so they could call directly, talk to the principal, and get any support that they needed. If anybody has any questions about their remote learning plan or the learning activities that their children are getting, or any social emotional supports that they need, we still urge them to make sure that they call the principal directly on their main office phone lines, or the deans at Brockton High School on their main office house numbers, and the principals will respond right away and make sure we get the families what they need, whether it's learning packets, whether it's internet access, help with the laptop, or social emotional help. So again, our commitment is to make sure we're supporting our students and their families during this very difficult time. We've got a lot of feedback. Some families are telling us, you're giving us too much. The kids are getting too much work. Other people have reached out and saying we're not getting enough. We understand that. And as we move forward and and tweak our remote learning plan and fine tune it. Again, this was something put together within 3 weeks that we weren't set up for at all. So we continue to make sure we urge parents to reach out so we can support them in any way.
Mr. Superintendent, I want to thank you. And most people know that Mike's a proud graduate of Brockton High School himself, class of '87. So, we're all in this together. The superintendent has been just a great partner and very responsive. Everybody on the school side, from Jess Hodges, who is the PR communication specialist. And we want to really publicly thank Chartwells, right, our partner, because we have 10 sites every single day where boys and girls and families can get the free and reduced lunch. And we're a free reduced lunch community. So lunches are given out every day at 10 sites. Breakfasts are given out. And I want to thank the superintendent publicly again, because just a couple of weeks ago, I asked Mike if we could give out handouts in multiple languages. It was English, Spanish, it was Cape Verdean Creole, Haitian Creole, just to express again the curfew, 9 p.m., 6 a.m., best practices from the health standards. Mike said, absolutely. And the bilingual department helped translate it. And 5,000 were given out one week, 5,000 another week. So this is a partnership. It really is. So thank you for everything you're doing, Superintendent. And I know we're going to also talk about, we'll talk about the virtual graduation, but I do want to just share with the general public. I called the superintendent the other day, and he actually was out physically himself with his wife, putting up the signs for the people that are graduating from Brockton Public Schools. So that just shows the type of character Mike Thomas is. So thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Chairman from Ward 3, Mark D'Agostino. School Committee, we have great members of the School Committee, and I'm proud to call Mark not just my friend, but Vice Chair of the School Committee. And thank you for joining tonight, Mark.
Thank you for having me. And so I do want to take a minute and to those that have been lost and their loved ones, and your school committee members are certainly thinking of all of you and keeping you all in mind. And of course, we're glad to have a wonderful superintendent to help us through, and the leadership of our mayor as well. So I want to thank my colleagues on the school committee. They have all stepped up and made themselves available whenever they've been needed, as well as our bargaining units. Every one of our bargaining units, they've all worked with us and put the students first. And, what did we need to do for the students? That's always been, what they've, how they've approached this and really worked with us through this. And I also want to make sure that we mention the parents who have now had to become the teachers while some of them are working full-time remotely and trying to do both jobs. And it's really been difficult. I know, and you both have kids and are experiencing the same thing, just like, my family is, and families all over the city. And so, we get it. And the mayor mentioned Chartwells. They have been a phenomenal partner, done a great job, and have been instrumental. This was kind of an unprecedented situation that, we had to kind of take step at the time as it unfolded. But the first thing, when the three of us talked about closing for a period of time, it was, okay, we have to make sure kids are eating. Some kids rely on us to eat, and we had to make sure that happened. And Chartwell stepped right up right away. So we really do appreciate them. And I definitely want to make sure that I mention our teachers. We have had to ask them to completely change everything they're doing, how they teach, and just completely different way of doing things. And they've really stepped up. They've done a great job. And again, like I know the superintendent, you've heard that sometimes maybe there's a little too much work, but they are definitely doing all they can to help our kids learn and get as much as they can out of this time. Again, if we know it's not perfect, if there are a few things that we can improve on, certainly let us know about that. We want to make sure that your kids are getting everything that they need from us and everything that we can offer them, and however we can support all of the parents who are now, again, like I said, trying to be the teachers to a degree. Let us know how we can support you, how we can support your kids, because we're here to do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman. And what Mark said is true. I mean, the superintendent, myself, and the vice chairman, we talk on a regular basis. We had a very in-depth conversation the other day, over a half hour, talking about graduation. Again, right now, we definitely feel for the seniors. For 12 years, they've worked extremely hard, and they're missing out, quite honestly, on things that we didn't, proms and finishing sports and musical and drama and band. And it's just, it runs the gamut, So graduation is something that all of us remember for our lives. So, walking into the stadium at Marciano Stadium is a special thing. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that in person. But we've been working diligently to think outside the box on how we can, first of all, thank the boys and girls, reward the boys and girls, congratulate the boys and girls, and more importantly, show them that we love these students. They're our students, they're our kids. So why don't we share up? I'll go to the superintendent first. We've been working for weeks and weeks and weeks on this, and the little things like the T-shirts, Mike, that we ordered to finally taking a vote, and then we actually pushed it to July, and now we're back to the end of June, which we're all happy with. So the floor is yours, and this is a venue to explain to anybody that wasn't aware of it. Thank you.
Yeah, so the date is June 27th, 28th. We'll celebrate all our high schools: Brockton High, Edison Academy, the Keith Center, which is Champion High School, and the Frederick Douglass Academy, and also the Huntington. So all those high schools will be celebrated on the weekend of the 27th and 28th. I want to thank Mike Simmons and the team at BCA, who's been working closely with Jess Hodges and our principals to put this all together. And again, it's not, we love the in-person graduation at Brockton High. It's actually easier to do that than it is this virtual ceremony. And we know how important that ceremony is to everybody. And this, it does stink for every senior that is missing out on that, and everything else they missed out on this spring. But everybody is working hard. The other schools, Brockton High, their lawn signs got delivered last week and the beginning of this week. The Huntington, Edison, and the Key Center, they'll be delivering their signs and T-shirts probably early next week. They have just come in. The diploma company has just reopened, so diplomas are being printed now. These are something that are usually done a month ago, but the company just opened back up. We're urging the students. They've been reached out to by their principals to make sure that they order their cap and gown, their sizes. Those are being shipped directly to their homes. So we want to make sure we get a picture of every student in their cap and gown so they're celebrated. And we want to thank BCA because, most towns that are doing these virtual graduation, it's either streams some other way, but BCA is going to provide this. So it's a cable access, which obviously can be seen by many more people rather than just streaming on the internet. So we want to thank them as partners. And again, this is important for all of us to do it right, to make sure this class is celebrated. And we'll continue to do everything we can to make sure that the class of 2020 is given the best possible graduation we can give them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Superintendent. I know we've talked hours and hours about this because it's that serious and that important. And the Vice Chairman has been a really vital, integral part of these conversations as well. Mark, your thoughts?
Oh, muted. Muted, Mr. DiAugustino, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, one of the things I do want to say is, we know that a virtual graduation is not going to replace the in-person ceremony that everybody's been looking forward to. You've worked hard for 13 years to get there, and we wish that things were such that it was safe to do that for you. We look forward to it as well. I've said to the superintendent and the mayor, one of the best parts of being on the school committee is that we get to stand there, hand you your diploma, shake your hand, and congratulate you for your hard work. That's one of the best days of our job. And so I apologize that we're unable to do that for you at this time. And I know that, as much as we're going to do all we can to make the virtual graduation the best it can be, we know that it's not the same. And that's why when the school committee took the recent vote on graduation to move that, into the end of June, we also committed in that same motion to make sure that at some point, when it's safe, when guidelines allow, that we'll have some sort of a celebration for our graduates, because they certainly deserve it. We just want to make sure that we do it at a point where it can be done safely. You know,
And also, again, the governor's guidelines is limiting the amount of people that can be in an area, right? We all know that. So, you know, Brockton High, you know, and I'm a little biased because I went there and I was class 88, and it's not just one of the largest public high schools east of the Mississippi, but in my humble opinion, it's one of the best high schools, if not the best in the whole country. So you know, we need to be safe. But we also have to think in a way that will honor these boys and girls. And I'm really proud of the efforts of the entire school committee and the superintendent and his team over at the school department. It's been really a win-win in terms of working with them since I took office January 6th. One question that's come up recently is, will there be summer camps or Get Ready or the Rise Up basketball at Brockton High? And I think this gives us a good opportunity, Superintendent, to just give updates on that.
So at this time, everything is on hold. Anything to do with academic learning is being planned virtually for remote learning students that basically during this period, again, we're not failing any student during this period. If there's a reason a student is not engaging in the work, with the support of the school committee and a grading policy that made sense and put most of the weight on when students were actually in school up until March 12th. Students, you know, were being based off those grades mostly, and then going forward, it was either credit or no credit. No, there's no failing during the remote learning time. It's just not fair to any student, especially those students who, you know, that don't have internet access or things going on at home that keeps them from being engaged. So those students, again, will support as much as we can in the summer. So we do some remediation, and those are now being planned virtually. Again, this is a very difficult time because guidelines in this phase system, there's no telling when they're going to allow groups of more than 10 to gather together. So right now, all we can do is plan programs virtually. And obviously at this time, you know, that puts all summer camps on hold, basketball camps, fun camps. Those things are on hold until, again, we see where the guidelines take us. And again, I thank you, Mayor, for always reminding us that, you know, Brockton is in a different place than, you know, than Bolton, Mass, or Air, Mass. You know, we're out in the west, you know, the western part of the state when, you know, it's, you know, Brockton's in a different place. I mean, with the number of cases we have. So not only do we have to follow the state guidelines, we also have to follow your guidelines with the Board of Health in the mayor's office, because it's important to note that we are different from other towns.
That's right. And again, I mean, everything that I've done, from the curfews to local emergency to closing parks and playgrounds, I mean, I do that out of abundance of caution. I mean, I'm a dad of 3 young kids. I don't want to do it, but we need to do it. And we have to make tough decisions, you know. One question that's come up recently is, will schools open in September? And I can just share, I'm on 4 calls a week with about 19 different mayors, a couple town managers. They are Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 o'clock, and then Sunday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Governor Baker's been on a lot of the Sunday calls. We've had the House Speaker, the Senate President, the Attorney General for the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. This coming Friday will be the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. Sunday will be the Senate chair of the Ways and Means. Governor Baker has indicated to me and the mayors that, yep, we're going to open in some fashion in September. So I think it'd be important right now. Again, we don't know what that means, right? And again, what the superintendent says is clear. The city of Brockton and our magnitude of numbers of students and teachers and employees and paraprofessionals and custodians and the like differs than Hopkinton, Holliston, Franklin. So, you know, we have to take it in a different fashion. But I just wanted to kind of maybe, again, nothing's firm, nothing etched in stone. But some of the options that we've been contemplating, Mark and Mike and myself, you know, perhaps it's a portion will be virtual learning, a portion might be, you know, a couple days a week. But again, we have to base it on physical social distancing and numbers and the like. So, Superintendent, do you have any updates? Again, this is all fluid; it changes day by day. But do you have any thoughts on where you think we might go?
So we have a large working group on this, and as we get more guidelines from the state, we're waiting. The Department of Ed also has a task force that's working on getting guidelines out, but we're not waiting. You know, we obviously will follow those guidelines, but we can't wait for those to come out. We're planning now. Again, we're looking at every scenario. Do we go to double sessions? Do we have to do hybrid where some kids are online on Monday and they come to school on Tuesday and they alternate? Again, our schools are very large. We have elementary schools like the George, the Baker, the Davis, which is a K-8 school. Those are 1,000 students in those schools. And then obviously you have Brockton High at 4,000. And even our smaller schools like the Kennedy, the Hancock are close to 600 students. So there's really no small schools in Brockton other than the Barrett Russell, which is a pre-K school, but all of our schools are very large. So we obviously have to take that into consideration. We have to take into consideration how we bus students safely, and make sure that when kids come in, because there's been the CDC guidelines came out yesterday about schools, and they talk about, social distancing and wearing masks and taking temperatures. So we're planning for all of that. As we move forward and get more guidelines as we get into June, there'll be a planning part with the school committee, which will also get parents involved. So we'll have plenty of several planning teams that are working together on different aspects from education to operations to transportation to food service. These are all the buckets we'll plan with, and different people will be working in each area. And then we'll include parents, obviously, school committee, city council, the mayor, as these plans get to be more solid into August. And again, we'll continue to follow the guidelines as they change. As we all know, they can change week to week. So by the time we get close to September, I feel we'll have a solid plan in place. Whatever those guidelines tell us we need to do, we'll have to be ready for those.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I mean, everything's on the table at this point.
Yep.
Mr. Vice Chairman, any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, just that, everything's on the table at this point for next year. We're looking at all options. We will certainly be seeking feedback from every stakeholder, and certainly including parents, because as we roll out, these ideas, we obviously need to make sure that we're also considering the impact on families and parents who are, again, trying to work. And, so we definitely will have all hands on deck and be looking for input from everybody so we can do this in an effective way that, is beneficial as possible for our kids.
Absolutely. And I think the last thing we should talk about is, because, when I was sworn in and when Mark was sworn in January, we were all excited about the Student Opportunity Act, right? After years and years, City of Brockton was finally getting a windfall, and there was lawsuits again. Robin Webby, the Webby case, the McDuffie case, the Hancock case. Finally, Brockton was going to get substantial amount of money, to the point where the school committee voted for 93 new hires, teachers and paraprofessionals. Hadn't happened in over a decade. So we were all so psyched, and then the bottom fell out, and this nasty, deadly virus hit us. And now, that's off the table, and our financial future is really in question right now. And I do want to thank the superintendent and Aldo Petronio. Aldo is the finance guy on the school side, and Troy Clarkson's the CFO on the city side. And Mike and Aldo, myself and Troy, we speak every Tuesday at 2:00 with the state delegation, which is Representative Cassidy, Cronin, Dubois, and Senator Brady. And on a regular basis, the four of us again get together to try to think of budgeting and mechanisms. We don't have that magic number yet from Beacon Hill or any guesstimates, but any thoughts, Mr. Superintendent, just so we can tell the general public, again, you and I are talking on a regular basis, and our hands are tied a little bit right now. But I think before we conclude tonight, we wanted to at least talk about the Student Opportunity Act.
Yeah, it's we're hoping that they keep some of it in place. Obviously, it's very important for urban districts dealing with large school numbers. If they're going to have us come back to school, obviously with a lot of stipulations in place, it's going to be really difficult for them to then cut so much that we have to cut a lot of staff, and then obviously put all these things in place that we need to do to keep students and staff safe. So again, we're waiting for that Chapter 70 number to come in to see if they plan on funding any of this. I don't expect, obviously, for them to fund the full amount that they were funding when back in January when we got the governor's budget. But again, we're all holding out hope, and I know that our representatives and Senator Brady are really working hard to, to fight for Brockton, which they always do. And I imagine they continue to do so in such a very difficult situation. I mean, the state is, what you hear, has lost almost up to $6 billion in revenues for this 2.5 month closure. And, and there's a lot of things to fund. It's so, there's fire, there's police, there's services, there's a lot of things that have to be funded. So we understand, the tough situation that everybody is in. So again, we're hoping for the best. We're hoping at some point the federal government comes through and helps states out, which would really benefit everyone, not just schools, but all services that the city provides. So again, we're fearing the worst, but hoping for the best.
Yeah, and I think that's all, that's the honest to God truth. I mean, you're hearing rumors about 20% cut in local aid, which would be Chapter 70 and what they used to call the lottery funds. 20% to Brockton equates to about $40 million. Our budget's a little over 400 million. So, I mean, that's it's devastating. We hope not to do that. We hope not to get there. That's why we're really turning over every stone to see cost containment, fiscal responsibility, and really how we can take it to the next level with our partners at Beacon Hill and then our local officials on the city council and more importantly on the school committee when we're talking about schools. So Vice Chairman, any thoughts on this before we conclude the interview tonight?
Yeah. So again, we will have to pass a budget of some kind shortly, and we'll have a public hearing on that budget as we normally do and are required to do. But I think that it's important that folks know that the budget we pass is certainly not carved in stone, certainly not the final word. I think what we'll be doing is passing it. We'll pass a budget, but then we'll also plan for a couple of different scenarios of, what we'll do if we're cut this much or that much. And if there's a more rosy picture, if things turn out a little better than we're expecting, okay, what's that look like? And so, we'll pass a budget as we need to do, but we'll also plan for several different scenarios. Some of them pretty ugly and not so much, so that we're ready and can move forward with whatever it is we're dealt with.
Well, I want to, first of all, I want to just thank you both for taking time out of your busy schedule on a Thursday night to join us. I think it's extremely helpful. It gives really good information. So I do want to thank the Superintendent of Schools, Mike Thomas, and the Ward 3 School Committee and Vice Chair of the School Committee, Mark D'Agostino. It is Thursday, May 21st. A week from tonight, I'll be back. I actually have Dr. Rick Herman, who is a medical consultant for the mayor's office for the city of Brockton. Dr. Herman is an MD. He's an expert in pandemic for me as the mayor. He also is the former chief of the emergency room at the Brockton Hospital and also chief of the ER over at Good Samaritan Medical Center. And the other guest will be Linda Cahill again, who's the interim health officer for the city of Brockton's Board of Health. So I want to thank you both again. Stay safe. Have a great long weekend. And again, thank you for what you do to make Brockton so special. Be safe. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.